Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Meltdown Abroad.
This week's episode is all about those parents who are wondering whether or not what their kid is doing is normal, if they're just sort of overthinking it, or if their kids are really struggling.
Yeah, let's dig in.
Hi, Chanel.
Hi Tara, it's nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you too. Did you have a meltdown this week?
I did. So I had a driving meltdown this week. So I just get really anxious when I have to make left turns in Berlin. There's just no structure or rule or guideline. Like, they kind of do their own thing. Sometimes there's a line, sometimes there isn't. And I find the cars will either go in front of me or behind me, like the incoming car, when they're making the left. And I never know if I'm doing something wrong. It's a little anxiety inducing. I'll hear the cars honk and I just don't know. But I think it's because it's like a cultural thing where if you get it, you get it. If you know, you know. If you don't, you're kind of left out. And it doesn't feel reassuring every time I do it. So I'm always just left questioning myself.
I remember going through, I actually don't drive in Germany, but I remember looking at some of the rules about how to do things and like whether or not it's a priority road or not, and all these differences about what you have to do when you turn. And then you also have pedestrians and bikes and scooters at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot.
But in the US and Canada, the car's always in front of you, the other left turning car. But here sometimes they'll go behind you and I'm like, am I in your way? Like, did I do something wrong? Did I cause this to happen? And I just always overthink it.
Yeah.
What about you? Did you have a meltdown this week?
This isn't from this week, but your story reminded me of like a really silly moment when I was visiting my cousin in the UK with a similar challenge, except it was on a bike, and I was doing fine. I was riding around on this e-bike, which they have really strong pickup. You go really fast actually, and your stop to start is really fast and kind of abrupt. And I came to an intersection, and all the other ones have been fine. And then suddenly I started overthinking this one, and I'm so thankful that the bus that I could have gotten into an accident with was obviously very aware that I was not where I live and did not know the rules and was very kind and moved quite slowly. But even though I had this thing that my husband always tells me in the UK when you're driving, which is that rights are hard and lefts are easy. Mm-hmm. So, because in America, lefts are hard and rights are easy, right? Is that right?
I'll have to wrap my head around that, but
lefts,
I think it makes sense.
Lefts are hard and rights are easy.
Yeah.
In America. And in the UK, rights are hard and lefts are easy.
Yeah.
And I had it in my head and it just blew up at that moment. So I've definitely had that experience.
And hopefully you're in a tourist area and they're used to that happening. So.
Oh yeah, they were honestly really nice. It was fine. But I had those moments. You have a little mini meltdown.
Like just questioning yourself and wondering if you're doing the right thing. And I think those meltdowns kind of tie in really nicely with today's topic. We're talking about what's the biggest question that parents always ask us. And the question is this normal or is my child struggling?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we get asked that a lot. And I think when you just, and most of us know this, if you just go on the internet to look things up, usually you end up with more anxiety than you started with.
Yeah.
Based on the responses.
Yeah. It's not a very reassuring way to get the advice.
Yeah.
But it can give you ideas of things to think about.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes it might feel reassuring that others are having the same issues as you. But, when I think about just parents being able to ask me this question, it's a really nice position to be in. And I'm only in that position, and you as well, is because we live here and because we're expats. And although back home we're medical professionals, here we don't practice as a medicinal provider, right? So our families get closer access to us or immediate access to us to be able to ask these questions. They don't always have to go through
like a referral system or the medical system.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's really nice. And if you think about, for me especially as an occupational therapist, typically if you're getting referred, if we're thinking about the red light or the green, the yellow, and the red light system, you're usually at the orange to red before you're getting referred to me.
It's usually really late.
Exactly. Yeah. So I get to answer these questions when we're in the green light or when we're in the yellow light.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I feel the same way when I run groups and when I'm working with parents one-on-one, that we're often a little earlier in the process, which helps so much, and it helps parents understand more about what's going on, and then everyone's not in quite such a critical state.
You're not in crisis mode.
Yeah,
you
makes
get
such a big difference.
Yeah, I think because there's no guidebook for parenting, right? You're all kind of just winging it,
figuring it out as we go along.
Yeah, especially with your first child, and it's not a nice place when you feel like you're not doing enough or you're not doing the right thing. And as the person who is, particularly when they're younger, but like you really know their habits, you know their performances, you know everything about them, you know most of the details. It's hard to see something that doesn't feel right and nobody's able to reassure you.
Yeah.
If you're an expat and you've just moved to a new place, you're going to be tackling like dealing with a new provider who doesn't have your child's history, or someone who doesn't have the same language as you, and having to navigate those nuanced conversations and just talking about the uneasiness. You might not always get the answers that you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's all of those things are so relevant. Like going into a pediatrician's office, if you know that they're trying to speak just a tiny little bit of English for you, and that's lovely that they're attempting to do that, and at the same time it can create a little bit of a block for you to get questions answered or to ask them. There can also be cultural differences in how independent kids are at different ages and what they're actually able to do culturally because of things that are prioritized differently in different cultures. So it can feel like even if you get an answer, which you may or may not, but even if you do get one, it can feel like, well, but is this relevant based on what I know about my child, about what I know their cultural background is, and there can be a lot of questions. And then as a parent, the guidepost is always changing. Like I sometimes think, I was just asked the other day on the phone about a child who, was reversing their letters, but they're 6. They're totally appropriate for them to be reversing their letters, right? And so, there's these questions that come up of like, well, is this normal at this age? And a lot of the time, there are all sorts of things that are normal that we might be questioning. Yeah. But then if they're still going on a few years later, like if a child is reversing their letters when they're 9 or 10, there's something that's probably going on there that we want to help them with.
Yeah. And I think, too, it's good that we're able to have these conversations so that even if if we're at green light, we can tell you, like, hey, this is completely normal. We don't need to do anything about it. Just let them live and learn. Yeah. But when you are in that yellow light stage, you don't want to just be brushed off until it's normal. You have this need to feel like you're supporting them and helping them in a way. And that's kind of the phase that we can start guiding them a little bit and giving them that support. So if you're able to bring that conversation to your provider, your person, you can get that kind of reassurance. And I know that's definitely how I use being able to be more front-facing with clients and just have them reach out to me anyhow. Yeah,
and be able to ask those questions. And it makes a big difference being able to ask them in your native language, because you feel just so much like you can actually express yourself well, when you're trying to do something in a language that's your second or third language and you're still really learning it. It can feel really overwhelming to make sure that you're answering the question correctly, and then also to receive the answer. Like if their English is they're learning English as well and they're trying to speak to you back, all of those pieces create little barriers, and sometimes the nuances are really important and they can get missed.
Yeah, you talked about developmental age and what's age appropriate and what's not. And a lot of the times we have to take that into consideration. But when you move to an environment that's culturally different, that age range is not so typical anymore. So having access to someone from home who knows the developmental criteria from your home country, the standards there, can feel really reassuring, because that sense of my child is behind now feels heightened because, well, actually, just culturally in the way the expectations here are just different.
Right. Exactly. And so you can have some of those conversations more easily, figure out if it's actually just pretty normal and what they're being compared to is different culturally, or if there's something tricky that we want to try to figure out and troubleshoot and build some ideas around. Everyone can feel more confident moving forward.
So kind of thinking about the red light, well, we're not at the red light here. We get to work in the green and the yellow a lot of the time before it gets to red. So what are some common questions that family would come to you with?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think if it's red, you know. If it's red, you know, and you know, maybe you're already seeing someone or you've already talked to a doctor about it. But in terms of that green and yellow light, sure, comes up all the time. So I can think of one that comes up constantly, which is like anxiety around bedtime, right? Yeah. And you know, there's sort of differences at different ages, right? But if we're just sort of assuming school-aged, primary school-aged, you know, there can be all sorts of times, maybe like it's a busier day or more stressful day, and your kid's having like a little bit have a harder time falling asleep, and it's not all the time, but you know, sometimes they're having a little bit more trouble, or they want you to sit with them a little longer or talk through things or kind of express just some of their worries at the end of the night. All of those things are really common. And when we start moving into, I guess, sort of the yellow range, it'd be more that there's a little bit more consistent challenge. Like you might even notice that, gosh, like I'm feeling a little nervous about bedtime because it like feels like it's really tough. It's like a little harder lately than usual. And it's been that way for a little bit, you know, where it's not just get ready for bedtime. It's like, okay, there's maybe some things that we feel like we have to do in a very particular way for it to work out. And I don't mean normal routines that you have. So parents always have a certain sort of sequence of things that we do to help our kids go to bed. They're cues, they're wonderful. I don't mean that. I mean like every single night I'm, you know, getting 5 cups of water, I'm answering questions for 45 minutes, and they still don't seem like they're, you know, then we're in more of like, okay, let's look at some different strategies, right? But this comes up so much because, one, sleep is the time, like when we're getting ready for bed, the world gets quiet. The things that we were distracted by during the day go away. And now all of our thoughts are there, and all the adults have it too. And so it is a really normal time for those questions to come up, for even for the body to be sort of requesting certain things because it's like, I'm not quite ready yet, you know, or we're just not winding down yet. There's a lot of normal things around that. And then one thing that I like to use as a bar is, particularly as a parent, which you feel and you just know, it's like, I'm thinking about this more. Like I used to not think about this as much. We went through a lot of phases when I wasn't really thinking about putting them to bed outside of that. There was, you know, our routine, right? But now I'm like a little bit more concerned about this and how it's going to go. That would be yellow, right? Where I'm just like, okay, I might need some different tools or resources to make sure that we're kind of staying on the right track and not getting to a spot where we feel like we're really not sleeping, we're up really late at night. I mean, there's all sorts of things that could then go into the red zone, right?
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, so because we have this opportunity to start in the green light, to start, like if parents are coming to us with questions and it's not really consistent pattern yet, we can start giving them the advices. So what's something you would maybe give for sleep? Because you talked about the mind unwinding, and I just thought, you would probably have to prepare for that. And a parent wouldn't know to do that. They would have bedtime at 8, and so maybe shifting it to 7:30 to allow them that time to like really get their thoughts out and learn how to decompress. Yeah.
So one thing that can happen a lot of the time is that we sort of rush to bed.
Yeah.
Right? It's like we're doing a million things and we rush to bed and we expect ourselves to be like completely ready for that because it's 8 and bedtime's 8. But that's not really how it works. And if we can turn screens off, for instance, like an hour before bed, that's brilliant. Even a half hour before bed is really helpful if we're being realistic about life, right? And if we can allow some chat time, maybe before we're reading, because kids will come up with questions and things that they want to ask, and also it's really lovely for them to be able to do that and have some time to chat with you at the end of the night. It's really nice. And so one thing that sometimes comes up is like our kids want to ask us those questions. We're starting to get worried that they're going to be up too late, and then we feel this tension rise, right? And then they feel the tension rise, and then those then there's going to be a lot more questions and a lot more I need to get up to, no one, I love this, that like no one cares more about hydration than a kid being told that they have to go to bed. They're suddenly wanting to drink water and have snacks and do all these things, but how anxious we are about getting them to sleep changes.
Yeah.
And if we give it more time so that we don't have to be rushing around, it changes our level of anxiety, and then theirs too.
That's true. And if you're thinking about age range as well, like definitely the younger years, the kids need a sense of control. And so if you're getting tense and you're starting to rush, they're absolutely going to feel that, and they're going to push against it.
Yeah, for sure. And you don't go from feeling rushed to feeling sleepy. That's not how you just don't really, right?
You don't.
And so if the goal really is my kids really need, maybe the worry comes from a good place. It's like, I know my child, and I know that if they don't get about this amount of sleep, they struggle more, right? Mm-hmm. So that's rational, right? And we know it, and we know our kids really well. And so then, okay, so what time is dinner? What time is bath? Like maybe we need to move some of those other things up so that there's just a longer transition time to help us get to bed. And sometimes there's some different ways that we look at screen usage and stuff like that to help us too. I bet you have lots of examples too. Yeah?
I do.
Is there one that stands out or like you're asked about a lot that's kind of in this green into yellow?
Definitely like impulse control, and is my child listening? Why aren't they listening?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. All the time.
That's a very popular one. And it's similar to what I was just talking about, is we really have to teach children. And I think when kids are in the green zone, you don't really think about having to teach them because they're developing these skills kind of independently, right? They watch, they see, they absorb, and they model. And when they're not, you feel it, and you have this tension. You're like, why am I having to repeat myself? Like we did this yesterday, or we've been doing this every day this week. And so I like that my families get to come to me in that phase, because I'm like, you could actually just start teaching. It's normal for you to have to repeat behaviors for them to learn. They have to learn by example, and if you don't tell them, how are they gonna know? So I think especially I get this for the younger kids. So the 3, the 4, the 5-year-olds, it's why aren't they listening? And typically they're either in preschool, or in Germany, I believe some of them might be starting kindergarten. So that's highlighted a lot, that they're not following directions. I'm having to repeat myself a lot. But you know what? This is completely normal. At this age, that's quite typical, that they hear things, they're prioritizing something else. Something else is more fun. Play is their main occupation. And so if they see something that's enticing and exciting, it's all about redirecting them, and redirecting them in a positive way, in a way that is loving, caring, and gives them a sense of choice or control as well.
Well, that's it. I think sometimes even when parents are giving a direction, it's like we're not actually right next to them where they're looking at us and we're giving them, this is the next step. We're across the room. They're in the middle of playing. And all of those things are cues to whether or not that's going to go in the direction that you want, right?
And a lot of the times it's verbal. And kids, they get information visually and by physical demonstration, right? So be next to them and show them, like, hey, let's clean up, and not just clean up, pick your toys up, let's demonstrate and model and do it together. Slowly, softly, kindly, right?
Yeah, even I feel like there's a huge difference between if I'm across the way saying it's time to pick up our stuff, whether that's like really lovingly said or whatever, versus me getting on the floor. What did you make? Mm-hmm. We talk about for a minute. That is so cool. It's time to pick up our blocks, and then we kind of go through it together, right?
Exactly.
Particularly at that age, right?
You make it playful.
Oh, for sure.
Kids, their occupation is play. A lot of what I do with kids is learning through play. So if I'm giving them an instruction, I'm going to make it playful. We're going to maybe walk the tiger to the box for him to sleep.
Oh, yeah. We play basketball while putting some of our non-fragile toys away, like tossing it into the box.
Exactly. And they're cleaning up, they're having fun. And it's a positive interaction with this demand that they're not going to want to resist.
Yeah.
right? So a lot of like the green flags is that they might interrupt a lot. They're grabbing things, they're missing their names when it's being called. It's again, that's completely typical at that age. They're learning their environment, their sensory system is developing, they're learning how to prioritize things, their executive functioning skills are developing, their working memory, their cognition, like just awareness and insight. There's a lot of growth happening at this age. And so we need to be gentle and a little bit patient.
Yeah.
And then what I find is that if my families are coming in the yellow light stage, that's more when it's there's more consistency. So they might know what the rules are, but they're leading with their bodies first instead of their mind first, is what I always say. Are they able to think about what's happening? So are they going to say, I'm reaching for this and then grabbing it? Or are they just can't resist the urge and they have to grab it? Okay. And so that's when we're teaching them impulse control, how to slow down, how to be aware of, things can break, things can fall. And again, it's that showing them what can happen instead of just telling them, modeling it to them and really learning with them. Yeah.
I think it's great. I think these are really common questions because they're things that, for all of this that are really typical when we're little. And then there's a development of skills, right? And when we feel the friction, it might be because a kid is having some difficulty developing skills. It also could be that like the way we're asking could be shifted a little bit to help them to practice the skill too, and that both of those things can help quite a lot.
And if they're in the yellow light and, it's still just they need to learn how to control their impulse. If this is now pushing they're in school age and their majority of their days routine based and, repetitive, and they're still not picking these things up, that's when it's like you get access to me to work with them while they're still in the stage and we're not quite at the red light as yet.
I think that's something that, we don't have to wait until we have diagnoses, are really severely struggling to reach out and do some coaching with a professional. Because it can help so much to just have some ways of navigating some of these really, really common challenges that pop up before you're anywhere near what sort of the red zone, red light kind of
atypical for their age.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And again, like that's what I find really unique about working in this way. It's that my family's predominantly English speaking. They're looking for somebody that is relatable to them, whether it's from their home countries or just English speaking. But they're able to access someone like me, whether it's through their private insurance, self-paying, or there's availability of us out here. We're definitely around, guys.
That's it. We are, and it doesn't have to be an emergency situation to tap into resources like the ones that we provide. I mean, do you want to share a little bit about what how parents can access you, or some of the things that you offer?
Oh yeah, so I am of course an occupational therapist, and here I am able to work with families through whether it's working with your child in a one-on-one setting as an occupational therapist would. Typically, I only work in that way if it's private insurance or self-paying, because in a country like Germany, where I'm not medically practiced to carry that out, it won't be an insurance-based pay. But I'm able to offer one-on-one services as well as group services, because I think another typical trend that I'm finding now is there's just a lot of social emotional needs. And so working one-on-one isn't going to teach kids. They need peer modeling.
It helps so much. Yeah. And it can be hard to find wherever you are in the world, those groups can be hard to find.
Exactly.
So it's great that you offer that.
So I do work with group-based therapy in some school locations, but I also have waiting lists for just various places around the city that I offer that. And then I am a believer that when parents are supported, then the child thrives. And so I definitely love working with parents. I offer group services. It's an online-based session that allows us to just manage our own overstimulation their own impulses, because when you're regulated, you're able to show your child what regulation looks like. Children are sponges, they absorb. And so when you're able to model, it doesn't feel effortful. You're not having to teach. You can just take care of your own needs, and your child is seeing this and learning from you.
Yeah,
so
I'm feeling it.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
And then of course I work with the educators in the same way. I try to provide workshops in the school settings just to really teach how to manage kids with all needs.
Great.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, so I do work one-on-one with parents as well. I specialize in both anxiety and neurodivergence. So I work a lot with parents when their kids are struggling in those areas.
Yeah.
I also work a lot with parents when they're struggling in those areas and really trying to figure out how to parent given the things that are going on. And particularly, I think that when we're expats, so this is helpful for all parents, but also when you're living in a place where you don't have your village, I run a lot of group support. So I have an anxiety group. It's a 5-week workshop series to really help parents whose kids are struggling with anxiety. And I have an ADHD workshop series that is also a 5-week series. We meet once a week for 5 weeks online, and we really tap into all the things related to behavior and motivation and executive functioning and getting to bed and getting out the door, all of those things. And we work as a group of global parents together. And I have an autism series that's very similar. It's 5 weeks long as well, and parents come from all over the world to learn more about autism, the way that we socialize, the way that we regulate, looking at sensory elements and how we can incorporate those things at home. And the whole goal of those is so the parents really understand their kids better and they feel like they have some tangible ways of making home feel smoother and less chaotic, and that their kids are feeling more successful, and also how we can navigate school and those supports at the same time. Yeah. So I do a lot of that. I have a small practice where I see children as well, but I predominantly see the adults at the moment, and in groups. And I just have a small, almost always full section of spaces for kids and teenagers. Yeah. And every now and then there's a spot that opens up there too. I also, like you, I train all over the world. So I'm faculty with the International School Counselors Association, and I train and support international school counselors that are working all over the world. And I train international schools in mental health and anxiety and neurodiversity, and systems of support that promote positive mental health in schools.
Yeah. One of the things that I like about doing the online workshop for parents is that it is a global audience, and it's a lot of them are expats too. So it's a very relatable group. You're getting evidence-based information. It's not as diluted as the internet, and you just have this sense of safety, and they feed off of each other a lot.
And they get to ask, it's so great. They get to ask all these questions, and then they get to listen to other parents who have questions that they also actually had and didn't think to ask yet, and are also in really similar situations where they're in different countries. They're there for a couple of years. They're trying to figure out, is this typical, or is this like a part of the transition, or is this a real challenge that we need to navigate?
You're getting the peer feedback.
They're getting the peer feedback. That's right. And it's really rewarding for everyone.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, we have to be able to make ourselves accessible because we're coming from different countries ourselves, and we have clients from different countries. But I think it's nice to also be able to offer those services in this new country and navigate it in the same way that our families are. We also have to learn how to navigate and be able to provide the services for you guys. And we get to be playful and unique and creative in how we do it, but it gets done.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. So when we think about just general takeaways, I feel like one thing to remember is like if you're starting to get into that sort of yellow light zone, it's not an emergency. You're in a spot then when it's like, okay, what are some things that I can look at? Who might I be able to reach out to, a professional like us or someone else, that I can get some of these questions answered and figure out some new strategies, and that it's not an emergency. It's like a planning zone. How might I bring something else in?
Exactly. And if you are having these questions, it's okay to go to a provider. I would actually say go to a provider before you go to the internet, because I think a parent knows you're with your child every day. you know how they are. So if you're getting this nudge and you don't feel like you have the resources to do it, that's fine. Go on, even if you don't speak to the provider, you can go on their websites. A lot of them, I know we have like free resources. Mm-hmm. This podcast was a way for us to be able to provide the free resource. And again, I think I've said this before, but reach out to the embassies because they should be able to connect you with someone from your country who speaks the same language.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Excellent.
I think that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as always, guys, do not hesitate to ask. I mean, if you don't know who to ask, please comment below and we can try to reach out and see if we can support you as well. And again, always try to share. We want to reach as many of you expats as we possibly can and share on your favorite listening podcast app. We are everywhere. But until next time, see you guys in the comments. Bye.